Okay, so this is a piece that I wrote called Growing Pains. Alaska, Idaho, California, Arizona. All places that could potentially become my home for the next 4 years. Realistically, I can afford Idaho and Alaska, so those are my current choices. All I know is that I have to get out of Idaho. Though Idaho isn't a terrible place, it's quite beautiful actually. From the Rocky Mountains to Yellowstone National Park, though I know it's not technically in Idaho, but pretty freaking close. Every time I'm bombarded with college questions, the first one that everyone asks is, why Alaska? The next questions typically follow along the lines of, why the hell would you go there? I eventually just came up with a generic answer that would get people off my back, but in my mind, Alaska was an uncharted new home. The few times I traveled out of state by myself, there was a thrill that made my heart race and my imagination about all the possibilities run wild. Traveling by myself was one of those anxious insecurities I had, the fear of people watching my every move. To me, it wasn't about the destination. It was about the experiences I'd have once I was there. It was a risk to move to a whole new place, but I was ready to travel. According to almost every adult I've talked to, college is supposed to be the place to explore and break from your previous routine, to make lifelong friends and create awesome memories. These are the people who help you through the dark times, become your family, and help you grow into a better version of yourself. What these adults fail to tell me, though, is that these personal growths can take many, many unexpected forms. The Golden Heart City, also known as Fairbanks, Alaska, was my dwelling for my first 2 years of college. The campus, upon first glance, was enormous, spruce trees on every side. As my mother and I passed the Museum of the North, I glanced to the right and overlooked the entire valley. Miles and miles of green extended back until my eyes were drawn to the peaks of Denali. I made mental notes of every spot we passed and tried to imagine myself hanging out with a group of friends. Entering the main dorms made it all seem so much more official as we were greeted by the RAs for the Moore Hall. The voices of freshmen echoed through the halls, creating a bellowing sound as they all crowded around the 2 available elevators. The morning and most of the afternoon became a blur of shaking hands and introducing myself so many times that I overcame most of my anxiety about small talk. I waited at the elevator to descend for lunch, but when the doors opened, I was struck. Inside was a person with sleek black hair, a smile that spread into a row of gleaming teeth. I had previously noticed them at another event and knew immediately that we would connect. Now I needed to somehow will my body to go up and talk to them, but that was a battle that required massive mental preparation, which I did not possess. As we went down, I felt my heart begin to race as I risked it and complimented them, and in return, they told me their name was Alex. We had dinner that evening, and I knew our connection was instant. How did this begin? Through our mutual love of Beyonce. Us both being from Black homes, we basically had the same upbringing, and Beyonce is an essential staple for most Black people. Now, what else might you ask is included in the official Black upbringing? An example, it was quite common to wake up on a Sunday morning, hear classic gospel or R&B playing loudly from the living room, and immediately realize it was deep cleaning day. Another example is hair. Black hair is tricky to manipulate, unlike typical straight hair. Wash days in our house encompass the entire day, and if you made plans, they were canceled. Our hair's natural oil has a harder time moving from the root to tip, so we must be vigilant to keep our hair moisturized, hence only washing it once or twice a week. Another example in the culture genre is card games. In many Black families, the game of choice at family gatherings is spades, though dominoes is popular as well, but no one taught me this one either. Now this is more than just a card game. The game is as much about collecting cards as it is about timing. See, if you attempted to join the game at too young of an age, no one would teach you. But if you waited until you were too old, the same fate awaited you. So how does one learn the game of champions? You don't. In an ironic twist, even though we grew up in Black households, I was never really exposed to a lot of Black culture growing up. My mixed mother did her best to introduce me to my culture, but as Idaho is pretty white and homogenous, she could only go so far. Boys to Men, Prince, and the notorious movie Love and Basketball were foreign concepts before them. With Alex's knowledge, I felt cultural doors opening left and right. This was a person I connected with on so many levels of experiences that I had never given much attention to before. The presence gave me the sweeping emotion that could be described as home. This was the same feeling I got when I saw my sisters or cousins out away from family gatherings. This feeling is security, familiarity, and love all wrapped into the image of one person. My anxiety gradually grew less and less stifling. Together, we weren't afraid to dance, sing, and all around be crazy in public. I knew that if I was ever in a sticky situation, they would be there in a heartbeat. They cared for me more than I thought anyone could, and being in their presence naturally motivated me to try and be a better person than before. This was a new type of relationship for me because we were also physically intimate. We would hold hands, cuddle, and occasionally grind on each other at parties. If I was ever having a bad bout of anxiety, they would gently pull me into a hug. Growth was a main pillar that they believed in, so naturally I began to believe in it too. We confided in each other more than we did with most people. As introverts, we agreed that most human social interaction is trash, but somehow we never tired of being with one another. When it was officially breakup season in Fairbanks and summer was approaching, neither of us feared the effect distance would have on our relationship. Our bond had withstood the tribulations of the year, and we were ready for the good vibes to roll in. The last of summer's rays streamed into my new dorm room and warmed my skin. The next semester had just started, and it felt like I had made a clean break with the emotional turmoil from the last year. Though my heart was beating a tad faster than normal as I went about my morning routine, and there was a dull sensation in the back of my head, but the source continued to elude me. It's been 4 days of silence between Alex and I, which usually means I fucked up somehow. I had seen them on campus the last few days and even attempted to engage them to see what was wrong, but they avoided my presence entirely. I finally managed to shower, get dressed, and clean my room before I realized my anxiety is stalling me. I mustered the courage and trotted up the stairs to the 7th floor. I lightly knocked on their door, and on the 3rd knock, they yanked open the door. Without saying a word, they grabbed a jacket and closed the door behind them. As we walked out of the dorms, I kept my eyes and head low, perhaps wanting to avoid any unnecessary interactions before the conversation we were about to have. At first, the conversation felt regular, almost like neither of us had residing issues with the other. The conversation might have went a little like this. "Did you see SZA's last concert? Because it was lit." To which I replied, "Nah, but I'll check it out later." We continued to discuss music until I eventually dove into the issue that had been the source of the dull ache to my psyche. "What's up with us?" And they answered back with a single question. "What do you think this is about?" And in that moment, I had no words. Was it not them who had willfully chosen to ignore me for 4 days? Was it not I who had initiated the conversation in the first place? And now they were expecting me to examine their mind under a microscope, searching for an answer that I did not know. This only seemed to irritate them further, proven by the furrow of their brow and the focused gaze that they held on me. They said, "Why did you wait to have this conversation?" I said, "When we got into an argument while I was working, I figured you would need some time to be angry." The leaves allowed the warm breeze to rattle their bodies like hummingbirds' wings. The voices of students walking past were muffled by this sound. Their tone harshened and their voice became distant. They recounted a mental breakdown they had at a party, and their fists clenched and moved in sync with every word. I felt the ache of guilt in my chest as they blamed me for not being there to help them. I asked, "Why didn't you call me? I would have answered." They said, "You were busy with your other friends, and Mark was there to help me, but I wouldn't even let him touch me." I asked, "Why did you have a breakdown at this party?" They replied, "I had an abortion 2 days ago, and Haley was the person who held me as I cried afterwards. As my best friend, you should have been there too, but you know who was? My mom. My anti-abortion religious family supported me through this the way I thought you would. And so I realized that you value being popular and having a lot of friends over the genuine people who care for you. And you're not going to change, I know that, but I'm still going to be your friend." My previous understandings of the world melted and converged in a puddle of confusion. How could they say those things? Was I a manipulative person? Who had been there when their parents had kicked them out? Who had taken care of them when they were drunk numerous times? Me, again. But still, I questioned every action, gauged every thought, and searched every memory for the person that they were describing, but how could it be the one who was sitting across from them? Here I was with this person, one of the rare few people to breach my shield of invulnerability. They had seen my inner blue, squishy, silly putty core, and they didn't like what they saw, and that was shitty. I replied, "Well, if you truly see me as someone who will never change and doesn't treat you right, then there's no need for us to be friends anymore." And that was the end of our interactions as we formerly knew them. They immediately got up from the log we were sitting on and made their way back to the dorms. We rounded the stairs at the top of MBS. They sped ahead of me, never looking back as they disappeared into the sea of students. From that moment, the semester seemed to be stuck in an aura of dread. The leaves, once lush and green, faded to an auburn and then to a russet brown. I normally keep my eyes down, but today I couldn't help noticing the bright orange and black decorations streaming from the ceiling. I saw Alex the other day. We both rounded the stairs from opposite directions and proceeded to walk past each other without so much as a sideways glance. It felt like both of us had signed an unspoken agreement to forget that the other had existed. On the outside, I was stoic. The inside, my heart raced, my eyes brimmed with tears, my hands vibrated at an erratic rate. I turned the corner quickly, took 5 deep breaths, and repeated to myself, "I'll be okay." This was a new kind of anxiety I'd yet to experience. One icy Sunday, I sprawled myself in a corner section of the wood center. The snow covered all it touched in a thick blanket. The sidewalks became treacherous like crossing a glacier crevasse. The sweet aroma of fresh French toast wafted to my nose. I glanced up from the book in my lap and observed the students nearby. Some of them sat in larger groups with laughter occurring every 5 minutes, and some sat alone, consumed with whatever device was in front of them. Normally, I'd focus in on a TV show or have music blaring to drown out the chatter from other people, but today I listened. Having anxiety heightens my awareness of people around me, yet also causes me to believe everyone is criticizing every action I make. I'd spent most of my life telling myself that I didn't want to be alone, and this idea is heavily reinforced by society. People actually pity others when they see them by themselves, as if loneliness is some irreparable curse forced on us by the gods, or maybe the universe. But I realized in that moment that no one was paying attention. Their focus was on their own conversations. I was alone, but I didn't feel fear or anxiety. My heart beat at a normal rate, and I was okay. It seems like in an age of huge technological advancements, people still feel the need to be connected at all times. This is a trait of all humans. But many people are often afraid to be alone with their own thoughts. As I looked about the room, I closed my eyes, took 4 deep breaths, and shed all the negative thoughts my anxiety told me others were thinking about me. I embraced the loneliness. I accepted that I was truly the only person who would be my greatest supporter. This feeling isn't something that can be taught or prepared for. It's just one of those things you have to experience for yourself. I find myself stopping and appreciating things just a little bit more since the incident. From the sun peeking out behind a cloud igniting an array of orange and pink, to the way the wind blows through the spruce trees on campus. Every now and again, pangs of anxiety burn in the back of my mind, like a fire that never extinguishes, only dims. I'm beginning to learn to shed these insecurities, but it's a new battle every day. The adults in my life did the best they knew to prepare me for life's tribulations, and it's true, you can never be prepared to have your heart broken, or to know if you chose the right school to build a new home. Being in Alex's world, I gained self-confidence, learned to care for someone, and became content with my own independence. I also gained trust issues, a year's worth of nostalgia, and a fear of relying too much emotionally on my friends. Growth within myself became the champion in my story to guide me through the dark days, but was also the villain out to halt me at every turn. The risks we take propel us into the future, no matter the morality. Coming to Alaska wasn't everything I'd ever dreamed. No, far from it. So when people now ask me why I chose Alaska, I say, it's been the best risk I've taken thus far. Thank you.